Welcome to the world of Superior Threads, where every stitch tells a story. We spin each thread with precision, making them strong, smooth, and ready for your next masterpiece. Our threads are dyed with beautiful, vibrant colors that bring your projects to life. Every spool and cone is lovingly inspected to ensure it meets our highest standards. Superior Threads, crafted with care, just for you.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Quilting Connection. We are a longarm exclusive shop in Wisconsin. We have 2 locations, Elkhorn and Appleton. We love Superior Threads. We also carry the Handy Quilter and the APQS longarm brands. If you're local to Wisconsin, we teach a ton of classes. We also rent our machines by the hour, so you can bring your projects in and finish them with us. We are the originators of the Quick Zip system, the longarm loading system where you can zip on and off. If you're not local to Wisconsin, we do have a wonderful website where you can find all of the Handy Quilter and APQS products, all of the Superior Threads, that Quick Zip system, and we are a Laura Star representative, so we hope you check us out, quiltingconnection.com. Thanks so much for joining.
Hey guys, thanks for being here today. Now we are going to learn a lot. I want you guys to go away with all the knowledge, thread, and needles that you came wanting to find out. So you're going to find that I am a very free-spirited person. So if something pops in my mind, I'm going to have to say it immediately or I'm going to lose it. So I want you guys to really be Micki-like today. And if you have any questions, either like raise a hand or just blurt it out, and I will answer those questions. There's a lot to know about needles and thread. Did everybody bring pencil and paper? Because you may want to take some notes. The first thing I want to say is thank you to Superior Threads and to Rick and Angie for having these classes. This indeed is the first class of these kinds. So hopefully other retailers, guilds, etc. will do it, and you're going to see Micki on the road even more than I am already. So they did give you each a gift for being here. Everybody should have a spool of Fantastico. You're going to hear me go through the Fantastico a little bit later. Everybody should have a spool of So Fine 50. That's a great 50 weight poly thread. You've got some handy nuts in here. We'll talk about the use of the handy nuts. Hugo's tape. And you guys, I'm really excited about this. This is a new product that just came into Superior Threads this last week. They're hot off the press. And it's, who doesn't need a seam ripper from time to time? So those are very nice. So you can also get those online, and there is a product catalog and resource guide that you are going to want to make your best friend, because that has a lot of information. If you get home after this event and you need to reference something, that's going to be your reference point. And also on superiorthreads.com, they have got an education tab, and that education tab, if you have not been there, it is a great place to get all questions answered, and there's some pages that you might want to print out and have in your quilting studio. Also, while I'm talking about Superior Threads, their website is superiorthreads.com. If you subscribe to that, every Wednesday I send out a blog of a different topic, and it goes right to your inbox. And it really does have a lot of information that I just simply sit down and write. And so it's kind of a fun thing every Wednesday. Okay, so I am Micki Chapelier, and I'm from Central Illinois. So I flew in to this nice location the other day. I got to see my first snowfall of the season, so I wasn't so up for that, but it worked out just fine. I grew up on a farm, and so I was at 4-H child. My first job was in a men's clothing store at age 16. So I've always been that fiber seamstress type person. Married at 17, had my daughter at 19. So if I wanted to clothe my child, I made her clothes because it was that era. So I really do love everything that I do. I was a handy quilter educator, and then that led me into the Superior Threads job that I have now. So I'm full-time with Superior Threads. So if you ever have a question that you want answered, there's a Facebook group, and it's called Together We Sew. And I'm the moderator for that group. And if you ever have a question that you need answered, by all means, I will be the one to answer it, and I will do that hopefully in a timely manner for you. Okay, so we're going to get started. I said earlier, a 3-part class. The first one is you're going to hear me basically talking about threads, needles, and kind of some myths that I want to debunk about threads. The second part of the class, we're all going to be using our machines, and I brought a lot of my own threads from home, and you get to go up and just pick out threads that you want to play with and put them on your machine and have some playtime. And then the last thing that we're going to do is I pre-cut some material, and we're all going to make this little pouch that you get to take home, and you're going to embellish it with the threads of your choice. So it's going to be quite a class with a lot of stuff to get to, so just bear with me. All right, the first thing I'm going to talk about are needles. We have got domestic needles and we've got long arm needles. Can I see the raise of hands of everybody in the room that has a long arm? Oh, Rick and Angie's done a really good job, evidently. A really good job. Okay, so as you all know, a long arm is going to take a special needle separate than with the domestic. So with the domestic, there's a definite way that the needle has got to go into your machine. With a long arm, it's not quite that simplified because of how your long arm is going to go in the different directions. The multi-directional needles is what you need. So in this, with the long arm, you have to make sure that the thread guide, the ridge, is in the front. It's actually, once you get used to it, it's very easy. But I do want to say that we have got 2 types of needles for long arms. One is a sharp, and the other is a ballpoint. I'm going to tell you the ballpoint has its time and place. If you're doing a t-shirt quilt, the ballpoint is going to be the one that you're going to want to use. If you're doing a vintage quilt top, a ballpoint is also going to be the needle of choice that you're going to want to use. The reason being is our fibers now are, whenever they're created, are a self-healing. And so now, if you're using a sharp on a fabric and you puncture the fibers, they're actually going to rebond in a manner. Vintage material is not that forgiving. And so I'm going to want to use an FFG is going to give you the description and tell you that that is a ballpoint needle. Anytime you see FFG, that indicates ballpoint. So when you're using an FFG, it's going to, because it's already blunted at the end, it's going to go down, it's going to separate those fibers, bring up that stitch. It's not going to pierce your fibers. So a ballpoint has got its place. I prefer, unless you're using, for the other manner I was talking about, I prefer you use a sharp. And the reason is that when that needle goes through and brings up that bobbin thread, I want that perfect, that sharp is going to go down and it's going to bring up that bobbin thread and make that perfect stitch that we're looking for. So, and a fresh needle whenever you're on the long arm. I cannot tell you, the fresh needle is very important. Then as far as domestic needles go, at Superior Threads, we have a titanium coated needle. These are, because they are titanium coated, they're going to last very, very long. Now, I did tell the story yesterday. Growing up, the only machine that I ever sewed on was a Singer sewing machine. I knew no other. And so my mother always told me, Mick, well, actually, Michelle, she would call me, you do not change a needle unless it breaks. And so then whenever I came into the real world, I'm like, oh, Mom, you kind of set me up for failure there, because it's not true. You really do need to keep a fresh needle in there. It's all about having that best stitch quality that we can, and having the right needle is very important. So this is the first thing that I'm really going to drill into you. Needles do not go, unless it's an FFG for a t-shirt or a vintage. The type of needle is not important. What is important is the size of needle to the thread that you're using. That is the number one thing that I want you to look at. So I have got a size 14 right here in my hand. What you may not know is on most of our threads, I just happened to pick up a So Sassy. Now this is a 12 weight thread. Right here at the bottom of that thread, it is going to tell you to use a 100/16 needle. So it tells you the needle size that you're going to be using. If somebody comes into the booth and says, I've got such and such a thread and I hate it, my machine does not like it, it's shredding. First thing I'm going to tell you is, I would like you to check your needle. You probably have the wrong size needle in there. If a thread is shredding or breaking, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be that you either need to go up a size or down a size in your needle. Okay? There are differentials. Sometimes that's not always the case, but please pay attention to your needle size for your threads. And in this product guide, towards the back of it, it will tell you on your home machines the kind of needle or the kind of thread, the weight, and what needle you should be using. So this is a very important guide to keep accessible at all times. Okay? So I've got a lot of threads that I'm going to be going through, and I'm going to tell you why I love them, what their best function is, and we're going to start with the heaviest. Our heaviest happens to be, threads go from an 8 weight up to 100 weight. 8 weight being the heaviest, 100 weight being like silk. That is going to be your finest thread out there. So when you think of an 8 weight thread, of course it's more for a decorative stitch. And the first one I'm going to talk about is called Razzle Dazzle. This is one that it's useful in certain manners. It really is decorative. You're going to use it for couching purposes. Angie had a wonderful sample yesterday in the Appleton store where she did it in her borders, and it was just beautiful. So this is our 8 weight, and it's for serging work. You can use it in your upper loopers for serging. It's a wonderful thread, and you can pass those around so you can. Oh yes. Okay. We've got a sample.
Okay, so Razzle Dazzle. Do you tell them it needs to be in bobbin? Sorry.
Yes, it's for bobbin work.
So bobbin work. So those of you with long arms that have the zipper system, we have a flip zipper. So you can leave it all pinned to your zippers, unzip it from your frame, zip it to the flip zipper, and that's going to take your whole project and turn it upside down on your frame.
Oh, wait, look at that. Look at that.
Magic. We've had it for a while. If you rent, we call it the oops zipper, because sometimes if you pin the wrong way, then it'll flip it back the correct way for you. But we can also use it for bobbin drawing. So I'm going to pass this sample around, and what I want you to look at is here, it says it's the same razzle dazzle thread, but depending on the color that you use for your top thread, it changes the look of that razzle dazzle on your quilt top. Okay.
Isn't that just beautiful?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a bold fiber.
It's wonderful. We love it. So it's super fun. I usually will do it like maybe in a border of a quilt. So you would stitch the edge. You would stitch in the ditch you're sashing, because then that's going to give you your boundary of your border on your backing fabric. Does that make sense? Yeah. Then you can use that flip, like quilt the whole middle. Then I'd use that flip zipper to flip everything upside down.
I think Sue can leave already because she's pretty excited about that.
Worth the price of admission, which was free. But then you flip it upside down, you've got that boundary of where your border is, and then you can use this razzle dazzle in your bobbin and do decorative quilting throughout that quilt and your border too.
So you're saying your bobbin on the top?
Yep, because you've flipped that whole project upside down, so you're looking at your backing fabric and the fancy thread is in your bobbin, coming out on your quilt top, and you still need to use a top thread, but that's going to be on your backing because your project is upside down.
So do those zippers need to be sewn to your leaders?
No. So that flip zipper is all on its own. It's already sewn together, so you leave your quilt pinned to the zippers how you loaded it normally, and you just unzip it from the frame, zip another zipper to those zippers, and then that's what flips it upside down for you.
I'll get one of them.
Yes, I'll grab them for you.
Do you have them in stock?
Question was, would you put it on the top, only in the bobbin? Go ahead, Micki.
So it's an 8 weight. So it is very hard to get it through any needle for that purpose. So that's why it is called a couching or a bobbin thread.
Cool.
Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, she's going to go get one of those flip things. Okay, so that was our 8 weight. Now, yes, I'm sorry. That's a personal preference, but definitely you would not want anything that is real close, because think about that 8 weight thread and think at how it might draw it in. So I would do it quite a big pattern on it. Okay? All right, you guys, the next thread, my favorite thread. I'm just going to tell you, indeed, it was not named after me. However, it could be. It's called So Sassy. I love this thread, 12 weight. So I do want to show you, if you can see it, this is a cross-wound thread. So even though it is on a spool, does everybody know the differential between a straight wound and a cross wound? If it's cross wound, it's got to come off like this. If it's straight wound, it's got to come off to the side. So if you... I saw a kind of surprised look there. So if you are using a straight wound up like this, it's going to be more likely that you're going to have problems with it breaking, because it really has to do with how it is wound on the spool of thread. Okay, so this one is cross wound. So I can in fact use this on my long arm, which I have done, and it's going to come off in this manner. So it's just going to be on the regular post. And what this thread does is because it is a 12 weight, it's going to give you a really substantial stitch. And so if you want that hand look quilted without having to hand stitch your quilt, you can put this on, just give it a bigger stitch length, and you're going to have a hand quilted look. I use this for a sashiko stitch. If I want to do hand quilting, this is another option, with the exception of this does not have the coating like most hand quilting threads do, but it still achieves the look that I'm going after. I made this little needle punch sample, This is all with my So Sassy threads. So it's just one thread of So Sassy for my needle punch. This is a little sampler. I use So Sassy a lot in my embroidery work. So instead of taking your embroidery thread and separating those strands, with So Sassy, I'm only going to use one strand of it. And this is just a little sample I made, and it's just simple embroidery work with So Sassy. This is the Sashiko type sampling that I did, and that center is all hand stitched with the red So Sassy. So with threads, always think about the look that you're going after, how you want to make your stitch either stand out or sink in. So if you're a new quilter and you're using So Sassy on your long arm, that might not be a good idea, because as a new quilter, you know, you're probably going to see a few mistakes happening. And so you're not going to want a 12 weight thread being the star of the show unless you are really secure with your quilting purposes. So Sassy, I can't say enough good about it. $3.99 a spool, a lot of colors. All of those racks, those three to the right, those are all our So Sassy colors. Yes?
Can you use those in domestic machines?
Absolutely. With the domestic machine, you would just use it on your stand at the back. Yep. So let's talk about the stands that you ladies brought in real quick. So this is the one that Rick and Angie have up here for sale. And then I'm going to show the other one. Can you hand me yours? This is Superior Threads' other one. So there's two different kinds. Both are wonderful. The reason I love a thread stand is a cone of thread is always going to be more economical than a spool of thread. I always deem myself as a lazy quilter. I will get a thread that I like, and I will use it and use it and use it until it's done. Yeah. And so I have one of these by each of my domestic machines. And they really are very functional. So if you do not have one, please get one, and think about buying the cones instead of the spools because of the economics of it. Save that money, buy more thread. Okay, so the next one I'm going to go on up the line with is So Fine. Not to be confused, we've got two So Fine numbers. This happens to be a So Fine 30. So a 30 weight. This is going to be a great thread. How many in here are bag makers? This is going to be a great thread for making bags because it's really going to give you a nice top stitch quality. You're going to see the thread. It's going to be good in securing your seams because it is a heavier thread. Once again, it's a straight wound fiber, and so it's going to go across like this. I'm going to be talking about that a lot, you guys, because it's all about getting your best stitch quality and having the least frustration doing your project that we can get. Okay. On my machine at home, there are two, and this is just because it's my personal preference. There are two threads that I'm going to talk about that I quilt with most often. And this is quilting. This is not piecing. This is not anything but quilting. The first one I'm going to talk about is Omni. So I'm going to, every time I teach a class, I'm going to say Omni. First thing I'm going to say about it, it's a workhorse of a thread. It's also our most economical thread out there. The cones of thread, 6,000 yards, and it's $15.99, I believe. Now what it is going to give you is going to give you a little bit more lint outtake. You guys, lint does not bother me at all. Lint is going to happen anytime you're using fibers. You're going to get lint from your fabric. You're going to get lint from your thread. So the only thing that I'm going to say is I'm going to pick the thread I want to use, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm paying attention to my bobbin area and keeping it clean. To make sure that you've got the right thread for your project, I'm going to hammer that home. Important. Not only color, but weight is very important. Omni is going to be a very good thread if you're going to do a utilitarian type quilt. Something that is going to be washed over and over again. So if I am going to see how much lint a thread has, I'm going to undo some, and I'm going to wrap it around my fingers and just look up at a light source. Anytime you see those little fingerlings coming off of it, that is going to be the lint that's eventually going to land in your bobbin. This one is a lintier thread. Once again, that doesn't bother me. I love this thread. It is a 40 weight, so it's going to be a substantial look on your quilt. Because I love this thread, they also have came out with a variegated version, and it's called Omni V. Omni V, the V stands for variegated. People come to the booth and says, I want some of that Omni 5. The V is really for variegated. Now, with all of our variegated threads, this stands like through all of our lines of threads. It's consistent. All of our threads, if they're variegated at 1 inch intervals. Angie has a question.
There is a question on the live feed. For a 30 weight thread, what weight do you recommend in the bobbin?
Well, I love that. And I was going to get to that a couple down the line, but I'm going to answer that question right now. For a 30 weight thread, for a 40 weight thread, for a 12 weight thread, for any thread, you guys, 100% of the time. Once again, I'm going to go 8 weight, 100 weight. If you put an 8 weight on top and you're thinking that you need an 8 weight in the bobbin, you're going to get this far on your project before you're having to change your bobbin. The bobbin, whether it be in a domestic machine or a longarm machine, the bobbin is always the foundation of your stitch. So I get that bobbin set, and sometimes our name of the product tells you what that is for. And we have a product called Bottom Line. It's a 60 weight poly. And 100%, I'm going to use this 60 weight bottom line in my bobbin. So Heather did not bring a bobbin today, and so I gave her one of the pre-wounds, and all of our pre-wounds are also the 60 weight bottom line. With the exception, we do have Masterpiece 50 weight in some of our bobbins because some people only want cotton, and if you're making a bowl cozy or something that needs to go in the microwave, you need cotton. So we do have Masterpiece on it. But there's a couple reasons that I am going to tell you 60 weight solely for your bobbin. First of all, foundation. So once I've got that foundation set, I don't have to worry about my bobbin tensioning. If my tension is off, I'm going to go right to my top, and I'm going to work with the top tension. Okay, the other thing is 60 weight versus, say, the Omni that I'm talking about is a 40 weight, and it's linty. So if I'm using a 40 weight on top and I have that mindset that I have to use the same thing in the bobbin, you're not going to get as much on your bobbin. And because it's a linty thread, you're going to get more lint in the bobbin. So you've got lint from the top source and you've got lint from the bottom source, and you're not getting as much on your bobbin. So I would like you to take that out of how you've always done it, and please try to use a 60 weight poly in your bobbin. You're going to be happier not having to reset that tension every time you're changing threads. It's both on my domestic and my long arm. Speaking of bobbins, don't forget there's 3 sizes. There's a class 15, an L, and the M is always for your long arm. So whenever you go to buy bobbins, please make sure that you get the right one for your machine. Heather's took a 15, and that just happened to be what I had up here open. So that's what she used. Bottom line. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Omni V. All of our variegated threads are variegated at 1-inch intervals. And so when you're using a variegated thread, sometimes you've got a quilt and you just need to bring it to life a little bit. And that's where you might want to showcase a variegated thread. The 1-inch interval is really going to play a nice, it's going to play nice having that color every 1 inch. So some threads out on the market have a longer variegation span. And so with those fibers, you're going to see thread, and then over here you're going to see thread, and then over here you're going to see another thread. Where the variegated thread, it's really going to be a color play with the threads. So when using a variegated thread, you might think, well, I have to use a variegated thread in my bobbin. Once again, if I was using this thread here, I see purple, I see a lime green, and then I see a blue. So I'm going to be looking at the colors that I see in my cone of thread, and I'm going to decide what color I'm going to want in my bobbin of those colors that I'm predominantly looking at. And then I'm going to choose from bottom line and put that in my bobbin. So if you had chose because you think I've got to match that thread, you are never going, because the 1-inch intervals, you're never going to marry those colors both on the top and in the bobbin. And variegated threads are always a little bit more expensive. So please save the money and go with a solid color in your bobbin. Once again, just a little bit more lint, but it's worth it. I love it. Okay, so we have threads for every purpose. And Fantastico and Magnifico were the threads that came out for our originally embroidery line. The difference in, like Omni, So Fine, is they're a matte finish. Whereas when we think of embroidery threads, we think of a sheen. And so these are, Magnifico is the solid, Fantastico is the variegated version. They are exactly the same thread, just with variegation. These are trilobal poly, and so they've just got sheen. You guys, I said that they came out for an embroidery line, but sometimes a sheen is just what you need for that quilt top. Like sometimes it just needs a little shine to it. And so Magnifico and Fantastico would be a great choice. Once again, the spools are straight wound, so they're going to go off like this. But we also have the cone versions, which of course are cross wound. But we have, if it's available in a spool, it is also, that same color combo is available in a cone, yes.
And you use bottom line with that too?
Bottom line with this too, yep. Thank you for asking. And I cannot stress enough, bottom line, always in my bobbin. We have a question.
Yep, there's a live stream question. Does it matter if you're using bonded thread? And she said for the type of thread in the bobbin. And bonded thread is typically 2, 3, or 4 ply construction coated with a polymer or resin that keeps the entire thread together, according to the Google.
So bonded, most of the time, would need to be going through a industrial type machine. With a bonded at the weight, our friend back here brought in some bonded. They're very heavy threads, so it would not be a good application at all for the bobbin. In the bobbin, because you've got that bonded heavy on top, in this case, I I would probably go heavier than the 60 weight. But anytime I'm hearing anything being coated, I'm afraid for anybody to think about running them through a domestic machine with any kind of coating on them. Okay? So once again, in the base of these, it'll tell you for a long arm, you need a size 18 needle. For a home machine, you need a 90-14. Your cheat sheet are right there on your threads. Magnifico, once again, it's just going to give you that little bit of sheen to your quilt. It's going to wear very nicely. You're not going to have any trouble with laundering. One of the most recent blogs that I did is the myths versus cotton and versus poly. And I'm going to say from the time that fiber making has came into existence back, when our great grandmothers did, it was mostly cotton. And those cotton fibers, if you look at an antique quilt, those cotton fibers are probably still holding up today. And so there was that myth that when poly came out, well, I can't use that because whenever I press my threads, it's going to melt, or it's going to tear my cloth over time. You guys, threads have came a long way. Here's another myth that I'm going to debunk right now. I don't care if I've got a cotton thread on top and a poly in the bobbin. I don't care. Like, I really, unless it is a vintage quilt top that I'm finishing, which I will probably have cotton on, I really am going to look at the color I'm wanting to use. I'm not going to be watching the fiber that I'm using. All fibers are made to be used and showcased in the same way anymore. Okay. The next one that I'm going to come to is King Tut. King Tut truly does have a following amongst the quilters out there. King Tut is an Egyptian cotton. It's a long staple cotton. And so King Tut is definitely going to give you a lint outtake. It's also our most expensive thread. So there's a couple reasons: because it's cotton, because it's Egyptian cotton, and because it is variegated. Now, I always give you Micki suggestions, but there's a lot of people that comes to a show and they're like, I want King Tut, and I'll ask them, what do you use in your bobbin? And they go, King Tut. And there's no way to ever convince them to do a bottom line. They like King Tut top, they like King Tut bottom. But it's also going to give you lint top, lint bottom. It's also our most expensive thread. And so being a variegated, you're not going to marry those colors again, but it is a very, very luxurious thread. And once again, we have it in the bobbin, in the spool, and you may not be able to tell, but yes, indeed, this is variegated. It's just a very subtle variegation.
What weight is King Tut?
King Tut is 40. The one thing I will tell you about this thread is that the cotton is absolutely harvested in the United States, which makes it very appealing to a lot of consumers. Okay, remember I said there's two colors that I use, or two threads that I use on my long arm at home. One is Omni, talked about that. The other is So Fine. So Fine is a 50 weight thread. It's a 50 weight 3-ply. The difference between Omni is because it is poly, it's not going to give you much lint, if any at all. So I will tell you my colors in So Fine that I love is 503 and 504. Is that yours too, Heather? Yeah. So they're a silverish color, and they're very much going to go with anything you put them up against. In Omni, my color is 3022 or 3023. Once again, in the silver families, because if there is a quilt that you're not sure about what color to use, silver or a light gray is always going to take on anything that you put it up against. So I may be a boring quilter, but I love to quilt, so I can just get one done. Don't have to worry about the thread. Just go on to the next one. So I do love So Fine. It plays very well in my long arm. Okay, this next one, I had to tell Heather, listen to me, Angie yesterday that you may have to time me on this because this is our newest thread out. I love it so much. And
Sorry. Is So Fine good on these as well?
So Fine is so good on those also, yes. So Fine would be if you didn't care about a true piecing thread because it's a 50 weight, middle of the road thread, you could use it for most any application. If you wanted to piece with it, by all means you could. I personally will piece with the cotton, but it's just a personal preference. It's a 50 weight, so you can. So, remember I said that sometimes the names of our thread will tell you what they're created for. So this one happens to be Masterpiece. So this is a 50 weight 3-ply, and it's very good. It's our piecing thread, hence the name Masterpiece. So this is our piecing thread. It's a 50 weight 3-ply. So recently they came out with Pima. Pima Cotton is a 50 weight 2-ply. You guys, that 1 ply of the thread makes such a huge difference. So I like to be a very honest person whenever I'm selling thread or whenever I'm talking about it. And I'm not, if you ask me about a thread, I'd go, maybe you can find a better choice. So I do like to be very honest. So before I went out to teach the first time after bringing this on, I put on my machine at home, and I've got a machine that's my piecing machine. So I put on my piecing machine, and I'm like, this thread cannot be all that they say it is. And by gosh, it was. Like, this thread I love. I love to paper piece. And so because this is 2-ply, where all of those seams come together on paper piecing, you're not going to have as much of a bulk. Huh?
It's heavy. Paper piecing is heavy when it intersects.
Yes. If you've got a 3-ply, it is very heavy where it intersects. Because this is 2-ply, whenever I'm piecing with it, my seam is not as bold. It's not as heavy. And you're thinking, okay, it can't be that much of a difference. But it truly is, yes.
Don't sew buttons on with it.
It does have a certain,
Pops every single one with the needle.
see, there you go. So,
The other is okay.
yeah. So it would have an application. Sewing buttons, you're right, it probably would not be the best application. Or he's too rough with the garments. But you guys,
Is that a cotton or a cotton?
this is a cotton, and it's actually, the cotton is harvested in Arizona. So it's exciting that it is a cotton. It's exciting that it is harvested here in the United States also. This thread, you guys, is just wonderful. So there's 1,200 yards on here. And people were asking, gosh, I want it on a cone. Well, this is going to go a long way. Whenever I'm home, I piece a lot, and this will last me a long time. But guess what? It is coming out March-ish on a cone. So I'm actually testing it at home right now, and it's just been yummy. So because it is a 50 weight 2-ply, that means it's middle of the road as far as thickness. But because it's 2-ply, you're not going to see your stitch as much as it would be with a 40 weight or even a 50 weight 3-ply. The 50 weight 3-ply is So Fine. So, but this is cotton, and it's played very well. So of course, even though this is a spool, you could take this and use it on your long arm right now, and it is cross wound. So it would just come off just like any of your cones would.
Do they sell that in sets?
So they do at shows. And I believe that you can order and you can get them. Yes. So Pima Cotton.
I think when they introduced it, because I got someone who first introduced it, I had a set of like 6.
Yep. They do come in a set of 6 in a nice little plastic case. But if you want the 3-ply, there's nothing wrong with Masterpiece. It's just with the applications that I use, the Pima is absolutely my go-to because I do a lot of paper piecing and it does make a big differential. Okay, so now I'm going to go to our 60 weight thread. 60 weight, once again, bottom line, our bobbin thread. You know, I've kind of touched on it a little bit. It's got 1,420 yards on the spool. This is actually the color that I use most at home. It is 623. It's a very light gray. This is, if you're at a show, this is the #1 color that we sell out of most. So Rick and Angie actually did have some pre-wounds up there. These are class M. So these are for your long arm. So often at a show, somebody will come and they will want a cone of bottom line so they can wind your own. That's perfect, you guys. If you have a long arm, you know, if you have a handy quilter, they came with a bobbin winder. There's no problem with winding your own. I always deem myself, as I said earlier, a lazy quilter. And so I love pre-wounds. Whenever I'm home, I think in the last, since I've been home from Houston Festival, I probably finished maybe 6 quilts. I mean, I truly am. So whenever I'm home, I'm quilting and sewing all the time. So I prefer to use the pre-wounds. So if you come into the booth and you go, oh no, I just want a cone to wind my own, and you're probably thinking because it is more economical. So I say I used to be fun, and now I just like, my mind is always thinking thread. And so I've taken a cone of bottom line, and I did the calculations to how much is in one of the tubes that I just showed you. And the differential is like 2 cents per bobbin. So for 2 cents per bobbin, I'm going to let somebody else wind them for me all day long. They're perfect every time. A perfect bobbin is when you can take your fingernail and you're not piercing the strands in there. If your fingernail is piercing it, it's probably not a well-wound bobbin, and it's not going to give you the best stitch definition that you're wanting. There's also more on a pre-wound than you can wind on your home bobbin winder. So I'm going to let them wind them for me all day long. So they come with the cardboard on top and cardboard on bobbin, or on the bottom. This one happens to be one that the cardboard is taken off both sides. Now you might think, oh my gosh, the cardboard's off, it's runt. It does not matter if the cardboard is on both sides, if the cardboard's on one side, or if the cardboard's on 0 sides. It's going to play in the same manner. That cardboard is simply put on there for the winding purposes at the factory. So it does not matter. But they are definitely perfect every single time. And they are with bottom line thread. Any questions on pre-wounds? Yes. On one side or if the cardboard's on 0 sides. It's going to play in the same manner. That cardboard is simply put on there for the wind. And then we have we've got, this is called the neutrals. This is called the rainbow. And then we also have a monotone color, which is white, silver, black, and a beige.
Are they on the website?
They are on the website. Yes. Yes, they are on the website. So, yes.
I have a question
So that,
I have a fob, and
you are right on a FOF. You cannot use a pre-wound. That is a machine-specific bobbin, and there are some Berninas that are also like that. So there are some out there that are machine-specific,
I was wondering if
and your FOF is, nope, that is a true statement there. Any other bobbin questions?
they're not all specific? I thought they were all machine specific.
No, so FOF has they have got a machine-specific bobbin for only their machines.
I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I
I
have a
have
brother at home, and I would never put the brother one in my genome.
You can. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's some compatibility, you gotta look it up.
Oh, yours just like, did you hit something?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. But so you have to know if it's a class L or a class 15. But if it's a class L and your Janome and your brother both take class Ls, it's going to work in both of those machines. You just have to know the class of the machine. Okay?
Where do you find that? How do you know which class is that?
Well, let me see your bobbin.
I think most domestics are L.
No, it depends on the brand. There's either L or 15. This is an L. And here, I'll just get one out of here. How I can tell.
I think these are L.
Okay, so if you look up here, the 15 is just a little bit higher than the L's are. So that's the differential. And so if you put a 15 in yours, it would not take up. So the 15 are just a little bit taller than the L's are.
they come in two, they come in 15 and L, the pre-wound bobbins.
15 L's and M's.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yours is an L. You're very welcome. And it's once you get accustomed, like sight-wise, you can really tell the differential between the two. Okay, so I just talked about a 60 weight, and you would think there would be something between a 60 and 100, but at Superior Threads, there is not. We go from a 60 weight up to a 100 weight. So the first one I'm going to show you is Micro Quilter. It's a 100 weight polyester thread. It will take a 70-10 top stitch needle or a size 16 for your long arm. This is just like a silk thread. And so if you want the look of silk and a very fine thread without investing in silk, this would be your thing. Because it's a 100 weight, you don't have to get so bought in on exactly having the right color. Because it is such a thin thread, you're not really going to see it once it's quilted or used on your machine. What is a 100 weight thread good for? It's called micro quilter for a reason. If you're doing any kind of micro quilting, if you're doing pebbles and going around and around those pebbles all the time, if you were using a 40 weight thread, what you're going to see is a big mound of thread. And you're going to see every place that you crossed over those pebbles. With a 100 weight thread, your pebbles are going to be the star of your show and not the thread. Also, whenever I do feathers, which I will always say is not very often, because when I grow up, I want to be able to do them, and I'm not there yet. So whenever I do a feather, I will go up the spine, and I will travel down the spine. And so my spine is getting a lot of thread buildup. So if I used a lighter weight thread, like the 100 weight, it's going to not have your eye focus on all of that thread or where I did not come down on the exact same path. So the 100 weight is a true great thread for anywhere where you're going to be going over a spot time and time again. If you're doing a small stipple meander, and you happen to do a crossover, this is not going to show you as much as if you were using a lighter weight thread. So this is where I'm going to tell you, whenever I'm doing a quilt, I'm always, once again, I'm going to go, what is this quilt being used for? Do I want my quilting to be the star of the show? Do I want the thread to be the star of the show? Does the quilt need a little bit more oomph? And then that's where it would probably focus on what color combo of thread can I use. So I'm always, before I actually put a needle into my quilt, I'm always going to take some thread off and I'm going to puddle it on my quilt top to see what color I'm going to want to use. If you do this process, it's going to be just a short time and you're going to have the best answer for that particular quilt top, instead of getting into the quilt a little ways and going, man, I wish I would have used that other color. So always test it and puddle it and preview your thread before you ever start quilting, and you will be a lot happier with that.
What's the best material to use if you're thread painting?
So with thread painting, do you want so I'm not a thread painter, so do you want a lot of show of thread? So we're going something thicker, yes. So
Probably a 40.
at least a 40. At least a 40, yeah. Okay, so I am going to get into some more of the specialized threads, and that may be where that would come in for you. Okay, and as I said, the micro quilter is very much like silk, but then we also do have silk. And silk is such a beautiful fiber. It just, I'm that person that I've got my favorite fabrics that I never want to cut into. Why I bought them if I'm not going to use them is beyond me. I also have my favorite threads, and silk is always going to be top of the list. So if you are doing any kind of applique work, needle turn applique, this is going to be the choice that you're going to want to make. Once again, because it is 100 weight, I don't want you to get so defined on the color. Like the color, a close color, because it's 100 weight, is going to be good. You don't have to like really worry about being that precise because it is 100 weight. So this comes in a spool, a mini cone, and then a little bit larger of a cone. This surprisingly has 220 yards on it, whereas, I'm sorry, picked up that same one again. Where's my So Sassy? So Sassy. So this has 100 yards. So it's a little deceiving because this is such a heavyweight thread. This has got double the thread on it. So if you look at it and you go, well, that's not much thread. No, it's because it's such a lightweight thread. So this is the kimono silk.
Micki, one more question. Question from the chat. So if you're using micro quilter stitching, do you also use it in the bobbin, or can you use 100 weight in the bobbin?
So you can, I've had people tell me that they use 100 weight in the bobbin, but because the top and the bobbin are both 100 weight, I just don't feel like it's going to be as secure of a stitch. I personally, whenever I use micro quilter, I still will use bottom line in my bobbin.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay? Okay, yes.
Just a quick question. Okay, so this is a purist opinion, cotton with cotton, et cetera, and you've kind of debunked it. But is that also true with silk, that you can cross over? Because I've been taught that cuts the fibers in your fabric.
So I once again, very honest answer here. Whenever I am using silk, I am using it more for a hand application. So in needle turn applique, like show quilts will have silk in them. Honestly, I don't know in those show quilts what they are using in the bobbin. So her question was, with silk, do you use silk top and in the bobbin? And my answer is, I have no answer because I've not used silk on my domestic or my long arm. No, I will take that back. I've used it on my domestic, but in my domestic, I absolutely did have bottom line in my bobbin. Yeah. So, all right, the next one we have
Sorry,
is...
Micki, one more.
Oh.
Is the silk thread machine washable? When would you choose to use it?
Yes, silk is machine washable. And it's also, if there's a lot of show quilts that are going to have the investment of pure silk in them. And once again, the pure silk fibers, if you're doing hand turn applique on a project, that is where the silk really comes in. If you're doing most any class where there's applique projects, they're going to tell you to please get silk. Okay. So this one is called Treasure, and this is actually our hand quilting thread. And a hand quilting thread, this is cotton, but a hand quilting thread properly manufactured has always got a coating on it. And that coating is so it slides through better, it wears better, all of that. So recently I had one of our handy quilter educators reach out to me and she goes, I was gifted all this treasure silk. Can I use it in my long arm? Answer is, or in her domestic machine is what she said. Answer is no. And the reason no is because it is a coated fiber. It's going to do damage to the components of your machine. So this is indeed for hand quilting only. This has got a variegation to it. It's a beautiful fiber. It's a 30 weight 3-ply, and so it's going to be a very nice thick thread whenever you're quilting with it. So it's called Treasure. Yes?
For hand finishing binding, would you recommend something like the coated Treasure or something that's very fine to sink?
Well, let me tell you what I use for binding. So I truly am a user upper. So if I have got a bobbin that I'm checking and I'm like, oh, it's not going to make it through that next run of my quilt top, I'm going to take that out and I've got a little tray by my recliner, and that's what I'm going to use for my binding. I really do usually use bottom line because that's what's in my bobbins of my quilts, and that's what I do. One of the reasons I like bottom line is if I do happen to go through the quilt somewhere, it's not going to be as strong of a thread to see that I went through the quilt a bit. It's also a strong fiber, so that's what I use. The Treasure, although it is a 30 weight and it's going to hold that good, I think it would be just too much that you really don't need. I don't think you need a 30 weight for your binding. So I would just stick with...
Yeah, I know some people like to do like the visible stitches in the but I don't really like that as much, but I like the coating that sometimes it offers.
Yeah. But if you did a binding and say you want to do a running top stitch on it to give it that extra little pop of flair, sure, Treasure would be good. And I've also done that with So Sassy because I wanted that extra little pop. Okay. How many people have ever used a metallic thread? How many people have been afraid to use a metallic thread? Okay. So you guys, I think the metallic threads yesterday were the star of the show at the Appleton event yesterday. So people are always going, oh no, I used it 20 years ago and I hated it. My machine did not like it. Blah, 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 blah. So this sold so well yesterday. So when do I use metallic thread? It's usually around the holidays, of course. You want that little bit of bling, maybe in your thread painting. Metallic would be a really good one to use. This one gives you a little bit of hint right at the top of how you are going to play best when using a metallic thread. Right here, it tells you it's a 40 weight, and to reduce your upper tension, it is right on the spool of thread to how to help you to really get that to work best with it. Before you ask, bottom line in my bobbin. So yesterday, these women, and a man, this women and a gentleman, they loved the metallic. They were so surprised with how easily it worked. So it does come in a spool. It comes in a mini cone. And then I believe that they had a couple of big cones of the metallics. Metallics is just going to give you a beautiful little pop of that glitter that is a pleasant surprise. So metallics, please try it today. You're really going to love it.
Micki,
Yes.
what recommendations for quilts with lots of wool? What threads would be best for wool quilts?
What threads for a lot of wool? I would think with wool, because it's already a loftier fiber, I'm thinking you're going to want to really focus on a heavier weight thread. And my number one choice, just like winging it like I always do, I would definitely go with an Omni. It's a heavier thread. It's going to play well through the thickness of wool. And yeah, that's what I would go with, would be an Omni. All right. So I touched on metallics. And so I've got another decorative thread here that I'm going to talk about. And this thread can either be used by itself or with another thread. Okay, so this is like a piece of tape. It's a flat thread. So the way I prefer to use it is, if anybody's been in my class, I'm sorry, because I'm going to tell the same story that I do all the time. I was on the hospital board, and it was a hospital bazaar time, and they needed some items made, and so they contacted me. So I put some velour on my quilt, or on my quilting machine, and you don't need a backing and a batting because velour is heavy. And I did an edge to edge using a white thread, and then along with that white thread, through the same needle, because this is a flat thread, I used glitter. I just did an edge-to-edge design on there, cut out my stockings, had a bunch of stockings made in no time flat. So the way I would do this is I would thread your machine and take that thread, the heavier thread, right through the needle. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to pull thread this through my machine, and then I'm going to pull the thread that is already through the eye of the needle to the side, and because this is flat, I'm just going to push it right in through that same needle. Of course, no change in needle size because this is really, truly got little to no weight to it, but glitter, thread painting. Do you ever use glitter? It would be a great little pop. You would think it would stretch, but it's a very usable thread, and I really hope that everybody gives it a try today too. So glitter, very inexpensive. With the holidays upon us, if you wanted to make some gifts for your friends and just put a little bit of glitz in there, think about the metallics and the glitters for that. How many people have used Monopol? Angie has. You've used it? Okay. This is also a thread that many people are fearful of. So I see some subtle, like little noddings of the head. Okay, so this is where, this one is like it's flat like a tape. This one is kind of more like a fine fishing line. Notice it has got a netting over it. That netting is always going to need to stay over this thread, or else you're going to have just thread pulling everywhere over it. You guys, don't be fearful of it. Try it. It is very good if you're wanting to do, once again, as I said with the 100-weight, if you're wanting to make, say, some pebbles and you don't want any thread color, you just want to show those pebbles that you have done, this is not going to give you any thread color. It's just going to play on your fibers. If you're wanting to stitch in the ditch and you're like, ooh, I can usually get close to the ditch, but I can't get in the ditch, Monopol is going to be the star of the show. It plays very, very well. There's a lot out there, a lot of different types of products like this. Try this, and you're going to like this.
What do you use in your bobbin with that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, and I use bottom line.
Okay, so I bought the, what's the other stuff? Right.
Well, we do have bobbins in Monopol, but they only come in the L class and the 15 class because this is such a slippery, light thread that an M class cannot be wound and it actually stay nice and tight on the bobbin. So they do come in L class, 15 class, and then the large cones. So it comes in a smoke and it comes in a clear. The smoke is good for anything that is darker in color. The clear would be the choice if you're doing anything like yellows, whites, pinks, something like that. It's going to be the whites. And as you can see, the cones already have the nets on them too. So this is really showcased at a lot of events when there's classroom teachers. And once a student learns to use this, they love it. And then they'll come to the booth and they'll go, I want some Monopol. And hardly anybody ever wants the little spool of Monopol because once they use it, they want the big cones because it really does play well on quilts. Do you have anything in here in the room with Monopol on it?
I don't think so, sorry.
Yeah. Could you go whip something up real quick?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. So it really does play well, but the one thing that you want to make sure of is that you, in fact, do leave the netting on it. You're never going to want to take that off.
Vicky,
Okay.
question?
Question?
Go ahead, Tina.
Okay, can we talk about needle size for the poly,
Well,
monopoly?
The needle size for the Monopol, and it once again, it's going to tell you right on here, a long arm is a size 14, top stitch needle, a 70-10.
And then one more, so I was just watching a video, and I heard something that was very interesting, so I was so excited that we're in this class to ask you, is they were talking about the Superior Threads, Monopoly, using it, and they suggested using a larger needle on your long arm machine for a larger needle because that would help with any tension issues. Acknowledging it would be a larger hole. I've never heard that or thought of that as a concept, so I wanted to ask you about that.
Was that on a Superior website?
No, it was on a different website. They were talking about Monopoly, so of course, intrigued, watched the video, and she suggested if you're to use a larger needle with the Monopoly because that would eliminate any potential tension issues.
I don't know really what the larger needle has to do with like the tension issues because it plays like 100 weight, so the tensioning would be up in your mechanics of where you would loosen or tighten the thread. Once again, you could try it to see. I'm an advocate of, I would indeed use what the package tells me. And I would think if you have the bigger hole, remember you guys on the needle, the importance of using the right size needle to the thread that you're using. That eye of a hole, the eye of the needle. If one size fit all, we would only have one size of needle. And so once again, the eye of the needle is so fine that if you've got the wrong size needle, your thread, like in this case, a bigger needle, that thread is going to move around in there, and I would think it's not going to give you the perfect stitch quality. It may be tensioned better, like if that's what they're going after, but I would stick with the 14. Question.
Question from the live stream. Sometimes when I use monopoly, if there's overstitching, you can see the buildup. Any suggestion to help that other than not using monopoly?
I don't know why you would see an overstitching because it's 100 weight.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure because it's 100 weight, it's going to be a very light thread and it's a clear thread.
Maybe the sheen. Sometimes you can see like the shine. So then maybe switch to micro quilter instead of monopoly.
But micro quilter definitely has a sheen.
Has a sheen too. Okay.
Yeah. So if
I always lose that when I'm trying to thread it. It's like
so Heather said that she always loses it whenever she is trying to thread it. So just put a little black magic marker on the end of it.
okay.
You can go home now. That's your tip. So that is how you could do it, is just by doing that. Okay?
Just another question for batiks.
Huh?
I sew with a lot of batik fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular thread, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
I know the needle, and the sharp needle is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with batiks, her question was there a special thread that I would recommend for batiks versus other? I think with batiks, because there's so much color, I think that's where a variegated thread would be like very fun. I also with a batik, I wouldn't think that you would need the extra sheen from like the Magnifico or Fantastico, but that's just me personally. I would probably use a Omni V or a King Tut.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've used So Fine as well, and it looks okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's, once again, just a personal. Okay, everybody. Oh, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
With the monopoly, is there an application you would absolutely put it in a bobbin, or you would most of the time just not?
There are a lot of people that buy the bobbins. I am thinking whenever they're buying the bobbins, they're preferring to do the monopoly on top and in the bobbin just to give it.
For the consistency? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Okay, so everybody see the Hugo's tape that they got in their package? And you might wonder what that product actually is. So this was, my life is not real exciting, but neither was Rick's, because he said he went back and saw the Shark Tank episode where they tried to sell this on Shark Tank. So it was actually first seen on Shark Tank. A gentleman had came up with it, and it's a tape that only sticks to itself. Okay, the sharks didn't take it, so we took it. So, but what it does is it will go around your cone or your spool of thread, and you just need it a little bit bigger than what your cone is, and it secures those loose threads.
I have them hanging everywhere.
Yeah, and you have them hanging everywhere. That's right. So then if I wanted to put this cone of King Tut back on my machine, I would just find the end, which
Yeah, how hard is that?
I would find the end, I would take it off, and I would just put it on my long arm, my table, something. And then, yes, it is indeed reusable. So you can put it right back on there. It comes in the 1/2 inch, the 1 inch, and 2 inch. So if you think because it's a cone that you need the 2 inch, you're just needing to go over where that thread is off. So it really does keep everything very secure. And this will last you a long time. And it is very, I had my threads in those boxes on the flight, and I had this on some of them, but not all of them. And even the jiggling of the plane and the throwing of my luggage, getting it on the plane, it was surprising how many of them had came unraveled. So this is going to keep them from unraveling. And I do want to reiterate that there is no residual lasting glue or anything from it. It only sticks to itself. You can use it on any kind of cords that kind of get cumbersome. There's a lot of uses that you can use, but it's called Hugo's Amazing Tape. Okay. I think I went through all of the products that I wanted to. I would like to ask if anybody has any questions before we go on to the next segment. Yes.
I have a question about winding your own bottom line,
Okay.
and I think I already know the answer.
Okay.
I had some problems with it coming out of the tension in the bobbin,
Okay.
and I think you're going to tell me that it's too slippery to wind your own, and I should get pre-wound.
No, I'm not going to tell you that because it's not. So whenever I'm winding a bobbin, I'm going to put it through the hole on the bobbin. In the bobbin, do you have a empty? Oh, here we go. Okay, so your bobbin has got a hole in it right there. I'm just going to wind it, bring it through there, and I'm going to hold on that. I'm going to put it on my bobbin winder, and I'm going to continue holding that as I start the winding process. I'm never, whenever I wind my own bobbins, thank you, I'm never going to wind them. I think our handy quilter ones goes to maybe 5, but I always start at a lower set speed. Like I don't need to go full blast with it. So I'm going to let it wind some, and then I'm going to let go of that thread that I was originally holding on to. I do visually watch to make sure it's consistently winding. Yesterday there was a lady that had a bobbin and it looked like a volcano. So it was like winding heavier on one side than the other side. If it's doing that, please stop it and look at it. And it's a slow process for me. I never go at a high rate of speed on that. And usually before I ever like walk away from it, I may indeed stop it and actually do the pierce test to make sure that it's winding at a good rate, so it's not got any squish to it, and it's a good wound bobbin. But by all means, it should wind perfectly on your bobbin winder, just like it's wound in here. The one thing I will say on winding your own bobbins, the bobbin winders have an auto shut off on them. Don't try to exceed that because you can also spring your bobbins and then they're not going to work. So please make sure that you're not trying to exceed that. And once again with these, they always work for me. So by all means. That's why we make it in cones and spools. Do your own if you so desire. See, you thought you knew me. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, now is when you guys get to be creative and play. So over here, you're going to see my cases filled with all of the threads that I've talked about today. I would like you to come up and I would like you to take the threads and I would like you to use them in your machine and think about the tricks that I've told you to do to make them play the best. And Angie has already had some fabric cut.
What about needles? Can you just use the same needles?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got one needle.
Well, honey, you didn't even bring your thread cut. I mean, like, you're kind of working short-handed right here. Okay.
They're just empty.
So these are gridded. And so I would like you to play with the different threads and just try to stay within a grid and see how it works, and then go to the next thread, and please spend some time seeing how those threads work for you. Get the ones that you're less likely to have used at home, and now's the time to try them out and see how pleasantly surprised you are. Okay, and I've also got these. I'll put them all over there so they're all there for you to play with. You're going to try the Pima?
I haven't used Pima, but I looked at it online.
Oh, you'll love it. Now, don't forget, because you have a lot of cone holders on your machines, you can use any of the cones too. Yes?
Do you recommend using stabilizer on the back of the fabric? If you're not, because this is not a quilt sandwich.
No, because we're just sewing. So just pretend you were piecing or something, and with piecing, it's the same thing. So
Use the 2 layers.
the 2 layers.
Okay.
Yes.
Both layers.
So again, if it's cross wound,
It comes off like this.
and if it's straight wound, instead of like crisscross,
Yep. You guys also, now's a great time to buy needles, because I said yesterday when somebody asked the price of them, I'm like, are you sure that that's the price? Because I've never quite seen them on sale. So now's the time to get needles too.
So what should I wind on my bobbin?
What,
Use my regular thread.
let me see what that is. I think that is a 15. Let me give you one of mine.
To the world of Superior Threads, where every stitch tells a story. We spin each thread with precision, making them strong, smooth, and ready for your next masterpiece. Our threads are dyed with beautiful, vibrant colors that bring your projects to life. Every spool and cone is lovingly inspected to ensure it meets our highest standards. Superior Threads, crafted with care, just for you.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Quilting Connection. We are a longarm exclusive shop in Wisconsin. We have 2 locations, Elkhorn and Appleton. We love Superior Threads. We also carry the Handy Quilter and the APQS longarm brands. If you're local to Wisconsin, we teach a ton of classes. We also rent our machines by the hour, so you can bring your projects in and finish them with us. We are the originators of the Quick Zip system, the longarm loading system where you can zip on and off. If you're not local to Wisconsin, we do have a wonderful website where you can find all of the Handy Quilter and APQS products, all of the Superior Threads, that Quick Zip system, and we are a Laura Star representative, so we hope you check us out, quiltingconnection.com. Thanks so much for joining.
Welcome to the world of Superior Threads, where every stitch tells a story. We spin each thread with precision, making them strong, smooth, and ready for your next masterpiece. Our threads are dyed with beautiful, vibrant colors that bring your projects to life. Every spool and cone is lovingly inspected to ensure it meets our highest standards. Superior Threads, crafted with care, just for you.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Quilting Connection. We are a longarm exclusive shop in Wisconsin. We have 2 locations, Elkhorn and Appleton. We love Superior Threads. We also carry the Handy Quilter and the APQS longarm brands. If you're local to Wisconsin, we teach a ton of classes. We also rent our machines by the hour, so you can bring your projects in and finish them with us. We are the originators of the Quick Zip system, the longarm loading system where you can zip on and off. If you're not local to Wisconsin, we do have a wonderful website where you can find all of the Handy Quilter and APQS products, all of the Superior Threads, that Quick Zip system, and we are a Laura Star representative, so we hope you check us out, quiltingconnection.com. Thanks so much for joining.
We just wanted to say thank you so much for everybody that joined the live stream.
It has been so much fun. Thanks to Rick and Angie for having us. Thanks to Rick for not being in this video. And it's been a fantastic 2 days with these retailers. And thanks to Superior Threads for having this started. So thank you guys.
Yeah, and the live should stay on both Facebook pages for the next 30 days, so you can rewatch it anytime. If you have questions, you can reach out to us or Superior Threads directly. Our email is info@quiltingconnection.com, and then our website is quiltingconnection.com.
And Rick, would you really like to say anything good? He's back there shaking his head no, so I think he's good to go.
And then superiorthreads.com, of
Yes.
course, too.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
all.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.